remember walking through a classroom as an assistant principal, principal, elementary, assistant principal, high school. And this was very, very present. We didn't have these when I was in high school. And being distracted in the classroom, I wasn't as distracted maybe with the things that I had in front of me, other than maybe the student next to me or that note that was passed. Now you can kind of text. When I was a teacher, I remember students starting to have cell phones, and the distraction was the enlightenment. What do I mean by that? They'd look down and there was this glow about them. I'm not on my cell phone. Well, we all know they were on their cell phone, but that's a distraction in a classroom. And I'm not discouraging students from necessarily having cell phones. I am saying that because they are so prevalent and accessible and the fifth appendage in the classroom, it's stopping students from learning. So, how do we stop that type of distraction in the classroom so students can learn? Ensuring that students are alert in the classroom is a huge component of the science of learning or teaching and learning, and how teachers engage with each other, with the students, and how students engage in the classroom with each other. In the previous video, I said, how do we get students to become engaged and not let this be the distraction? I would ask that you have some rules in the classroom, asking students, like, what is stopping you from being engaged in the classroom? If it's your phone and you don't have a place for it, maybe there's a place you can put it in the room, maybe in their backpack, zip it up. But if it's very accessible, you know, as an adult, that if you get an alert, you're like, oh, check alert. But how do you model that for students so that students can be in the classroom and be very, very engaged? Because if you don't have their attention, and something else is distracting them, they don't have space in their heads to learn at all. So, coming up with a strategy and a place to put the distraction, even if it's the distraction is the student next to them, maybe not removing the student, but how do you get the entire group of students to be fully engaged in the academic content that's happening in your classroom? Once you have their attention, then what? How do you keep them engaged in the conversation? What are you doing as a principal to work with your site teachers on giving them the skills to promote engagement in the classroom? Because I am really good as a teacher to stand and deliver all day long. But how do I know that students are fully engaged in the process of learning so that they can take that learning and apply it somewhere else? And I would argue that if they don't trust you, you're not going to get them engaged in the classroom. But how do you get them to be very alert and in the moment? Now, yes, the classroom might need to be a little entertaining. It might need to be fun. You might need to change it up a little bit, not just stand and deliver. Letting students talk about the concept and giving them the ability to come up with new ideas on how they want to learn is part of the process. And I know we definitely need direct instruction because you need to offer information that they may not have, but getting their attention can be a creative moment between student teachers. It's the same for principals with their professional development with teachers, because as a teacher, if you could not keep my attention, I went off in creative mind zone and I was thinking about what I was doing next in my classroom and I wasn't focused on what was happening. So keeping it interactive, allowing teachers to talk to each other, and the teachers allowing teachers to talk to students in the classroom and making it fun. See if that works for you, especially if you're a teacher and you help students. And if you're a principal, allowing teachers to talk to each other will model what they will do in the classroom. From a principal's perspective, allowing yourself to ask teachers, what can I do to help you be less distracted in the professional learning environment? How can you make this very purposeful so that it can be something that you can transfer to what's happening in your classroom? And teachers, how can you incorporate something in your classroom where students are fully engaged and not distracted? Minimizing those distractions for middle and high schoolers is a lot different than minimizing the distraction for maybe elementary students, whether it's pre-K, TK, all the way through fifth or sixth grade. It will look different based on the continuum because we know that students at young ages can't typically sit for a long extended period of time. And that's probably true of most grade levels. So 15 to 20-minute increments, focusing on what that is and minimizing the distraction by asking them, what is distracting you in the classroom that's stopping you from learning? Because one of those distractions could be what happened at home. What happened on the way to school? What happened with the friend at lunch? What happened with the friend before school? What happened with the other teacher in the other period? You want to question and ask students to challenge themselves as if you have a distraction going on in your head, write it down. Maybe we can talk later so that you can be in the present and in the moment. And if you're a principal, you may need to have a box or a parking lot of what is distracting you right now. Write it down. You don't need to share it. You don't need to offer it to anybody, but write it down so that you can be present and in the moment right now. Some of those distractions they may want to share with you. It might be, you know what, that parent just yelled at me and I don't even know what to do with it. Write that down so we can talk about it later. You know what? The one student just used a swear word in the classroom or cursed me out, and two students were arguing, and that was distracting for me. And that's all I can think about right now. You can give them an out to write it down. You can do that for students too, as teachers. You have the ability to actually teach children, students, and even adults how to self monitor. When students are in the classroom, you can give them the skills to say, am I distracted right now with my own learning? What's happening? Am I thinking about something that has nothing or nothing to do with what is happening in the classroom? Same with in the professional development. Because if they are thinking about something else and their mind is hijacked or taken over by something else, maybe the activity that's coming up, the vacation, they are not focused. So you can support that with asking them, what tips and tricks do you already have to keep you focused? What can you do or what can I do to help you with this professional development? I think that sometimes we don't monitor what's happening inside of us. And is our heart rate going up? Are we anxious? Do we feel like this meeting is not helpful for us? And if so, maybe you can say, what's one thing you can promote at the very beginning of the professional development or at the beginning of the classroom? This is what's happening today. Learning intention, same with adults, you can do this. And by the end of this, I want you to have take away two key things that you can either transfer to the classroom, teachers, or students that you can apply this the next day, or we can talk about it the next day, or you're going to be talking about that with your peers. So you can support the engagement by teaching them to support and monitor their own self distractions that could be happening in the classroom or in the professional development. Checking for understanding CFU or low stakes testing is a great way to get students engaged. You can do this by having students talk to each other. You can do this by doing a one question test. This is the ticket out the door, or a whiteboard, or go into this Google form, one question, write everything that you learned today so that we can discuss it tomorrow. Because one, you can assess everything in that Google sheet. If you do that, you can do that with teachers as well. So you can do this with students. And if you're a principal, you can do this with your teachers. Like, write down in this Google form two key things that you took away, and then one question that you feel like you still haven't had answered. You can do that with students, and then you can throw it up. You don't ask for names or anything. These are the things that happen, shared in the classroom, and have conversations, a quick repeat at the beginning of the class period. You can do it with younger students too, but you might need to have a selection there for them if they're not quite reading proficiently. It is profound when you do a low stakes test with, even if it's a concept, a state standard, or a professional writing. Writing, for example, is something that students should do in every class, even physical education and art, because writing puts it into the long-term memory and it shows you that they comprehended something. And it also shows you what they didn't comprehend. And yes, they should write in mathematics too. If you're having trouble with student engagement, go back to these 5 things. You can review them in the description, or you can just rewatch the video. You can also go to the Harvard Review of Teaching, Science of Teaching and Learning. I put the link in the description on how you can access this information. And if you've never read the book, Make It Stick on the Science of Learning, it will change the way you see education. You will have a process that allows students to engage in the learning and you to engage in the teaching, where it's not just a stand and deliver, or you're the holder of all the knowledge and therefore I give it to the student. And the same with the principal. You can do that as well with your teachers and your support staff. So thank you so much for watching. Please come back often. Yes, go back, go to the description, subscribe so that you get my emails when I go live every Saturday between 6:30 a.m. and 7:30 a.m. Pacific time. Look forward to your comments and questions.